Private equity, investment banking, hedge fund, or venture capital? Are they your passions for a career? If so, go to budsforfinance.net and learn about my 30 years of investment banking experience at Goldman, UBS, Drexel Burnham, and McLaren Capital Partners. In case you don't recognize it, we are in Yosemite. This is El Capitan right behind us. Huge waterfall is right over here. We'll try to take some pictures over there. And what I want to talk to you today is maybe one of those critical things that you as an associate or as an analyst or as an intern is going to do. And it's not building models or whatnot, but it's really an arcane area. And that's, you're going to be put in charge of due diligence. And due diligence is just the most important thing that can happen in a transaction. Why is that? Well, it allows you to show whatever warts that there might be hiding in the company. It might also uncover some substantial hidden value in the company that you didn't see early on. From a legal standpoint, if the shit hits the fan, and as happens occasionally, the ultimate answer is due diligence. We looked at this, it didn't show up in due diligence and whatnot. But if for some reason you didn't do any due diligence and it came up there's an environmental problem or an accounting problem or whatnot, you're really going to get screwed. More importantly than that, when we were at Drexel, Michael Milken really is the guy who sort of revolutionized the whole concept of due diligence. And we went so super deep into a company. It was not uncommon for us to hear a CEO say, "You literally know the company better than we do." And by doing that, we were able to finance deeper into a company where other companies might do might leverage at 4 times. We could go to 5, maybe 5.5 times, and feel perfectly comfortable because we knew the company so darn well. So, as an associate or as an analyst, someone's going to come to you and say, "We're working on this transaction, and you're in charge of collecting all the data." So, what kind of data are you going to get? Well, depending on the type of company it is, there's financial due diligence, there's accounting due diligence, there's legal due diligence, and then depending on the company, there's going to be environmental. And if there's some particular industry, whatnot, there might be some other aspect. And we're talking about collecting literally hundreds of thousands of pages of information. That might include board minutes of subsidiaries, environmental issues. Does a company have all of its permits in place? Are they licensed to do business in the countries or the counties where they're doing business? Are contracts signed that the company told you were signed? And it's actually comes up fairly common that there are contracts that have just never been executed, even though people are operating on them. So somebody's going to come to you and say, you're in charge of this. Now, if you're in private equity, you're the recipient of all this all this due diligence. If, on the other hand, you're at the investment banking firm, you're working in an M&A or a financing department, then you're in charge of collecting it and disseminating it to the private equity firms and the people who are financing the transaction, et cetera, et cetera. But it is absolutely critical, and more importantly, from a young person's perspective, it really shows you, how to pull a company apart, what to look at, what are the questions that you want to ask. And you can never get too much information. You can never dig too deep. I remember there was one of probably our most successful transactions was we literally asked the companies on the due diligence list, it literally says, what kind of coffee beans do you use? It had to be a retail company, whatnot, so it's not as crazy as it sounds. But that's the level of the depth that you want to look at a company. So when you do get a job in private equity or in investment banking, and somebody says, okay, you're in charge of the due diligence, putting together the data room or evaluating the data room, use that as a tremendous opportunity to learn how companies work, how they're structured, how to tear them apart, how to put them back together again, what all the salient issues are. So typically what would happen is the financial due diligence is something that the company will produce at the behest of the investment bank. The legal due diligence, as you can probably guess, is stuff that's really brought together by, depending on the size of the company, either the general counsel's office or their law firm. Environmental, if there's an environmental issue, and there almost always is something, even if it's a SaaS company, God forbid, the company went out and bought a headquarters that's sitting on a Superfund site or something insane like that. It's stuff like that has happened. But you probably would call in an environmental consulting firm to take a look at that. If there's a huge thing is accounting due diligence. Now there's a big difference between accounting due diligence and financial due diligence. And so accounting due diligence is really making sure that the company that you understand how the company is accounting for the numbers that they're presenting. What's their revenue recognition policy? What's their capitalization policy? Is there some flaw in the systems within the company, which is a huge one. So typically in a situation like that, you'd go out and you'd hire one of the big accounting firms, and almost every big accounting firm has a due diligence or a forensic department who does nothing but that. It so happens that the accounting firm that really has a stranglehold in that is the E&Y group out of Boston. Worked with them on a ton of occasions, and I'm perfectly honest with you, I have no idea in how such a short period of time they can come up with some of the most sort of minute inefficiencies within a company. Oh, this contract wasn't signed, or something didn't happen over here, or some employee didn't punch out, or it's almost that minute in detail. So that's for private equity and for investment banking. If you're working for a hedge fund, it's very different, because hedge funds are almost always dealing with public securities. So it's really not as much due diligence for a hedge fund. It's really more sort of, how deep is your research, and that would be, obviously you're looking at all the SEC documents, all the public SEC documents. You might call in an industry expert to sort of snoop around, ask questions, get intelligence on a company. You might, if you're going to take a huge position in a company, you might go out and hire a private investigation firm to go out and check on the management and the company. Are they doing everything according to Hoyle, etc.? That's really dealing exclusively with public companies. Now, taking one step further is in the venture capital world. In the venture capital world, because oftentimes there's very little to look at, due diligence is not only is it very scant, in some instances, in some deals, because the VC market has been just unbelievably hot. Some investors literally don't have due diligence rights. They literally, the investors have no rights whatsoever to do any kind of investigation of the company unless they do it on their own. So the company won't give them any numbers. It's absolutely insane, but it happens all the time. Now, the VC market and the credit markets just in general have changed. So I suspect that a lot of those, excesses in the market will probably get weaned out of it. But in the VC business, it's really more focusing in on just the management, just the founders, the co-founders, sort of understanding the industry. But what the way venture capital firms work is they have specialists who understand everything there is to know about SaaS or environmental or AI or whatever the heck it is. So they have a really good grasp on the industry. So it's really a matter of how smart, how ethical, how straightforward are the founders of the business, because that's really 95% of the value of a company. It's just the management. So very different approaches here between venture capital, hedge funds, private equity, and investment banking. But again, when you're tasked with the due diligence, really take it super seriously, because it really is the most critical part of a transaction, and you can learn substantially more from heading up a due diligence team than you're ever going to get from, for example, building a 5-year financial model or whatnot. You really have a chance to look at the nuts and bolts of a company, to tear it apart, understand how the financials come together with the legal, with the accounting, with the environmental, all those different aspects. So anyway, those are my thoughts on due diligence here from El Capitan. Now, just one other thing that's crazy. Taking a look at this, I don't know how well you can see this in the camera, but that is absolutely sheer, straight up and down. One of my neighbors, and now this is absolutely insane, taking a look at this, but actually climbed this. I think he's climbed it on 2 or 3 different occasions with no ropes whatsoever. What they call free soloing. He started and just climbed all the way up, no ropes. So you can imagine if he slipped, fell, if the rock came out or whatnot, it would have been a very bad day for he and his family. So anyway, that's it for Buds for Finance from Yosemite. We're going to try to go to a few other places and share some pearls of wisdom with you. And I sort of like this sort of 60 minutes kind of approach. Essentially zero production value, no fancy graphics and all that kind of stuff like that, but hopefully some valuable content. Now, some people might say no value in the content, but hopefully you don't feel that way. So anyway, from Yosemite, hope all your trades are profitable, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.